Spectrovision Radio.
Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, everybody. The biggest podcast in the universe, where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. Jordan and Tom, how you doing?
I'm real.
Hello. I'm pretty sure we're real.
enough.
Real enough.
I pod, therefore I am.
Amazing.
Today, for lucky number 13, we've got a beast of an episode. We'll be following up on the Buga story from a few weeks ago, and Tom's got a story about religious leaders taking mushrooms. And then we were very, very lucky and honored to be able to talk to our friends Scott and Forrest from Astonishing Legends.
And a quick note that we'll only be posting part of the interview in this episode. The full thing will be available to our paid subscribers on Substack. So go check it out there if you love what you hear here.
Hear, hear.
Before we get to that, though, because that's the icing on this cake we're fixing to bake, I want to start with an article from the debrief that sounds like the setup to a joke. This article is called "A Rabbi, a Minister, a Monk, and a Priest Took Magic Mushrooms. Here's what happened." And it's everything you want it to be. Basically, they're talking about a published study from out of Johns Hopkins University and the New York University Grossman School of Medicine. So they're talking about the role of psychedelic compounds in religious ceremonies. Now, of course, that would be psilocybin or magic mushrooms, but it could also be LSD or ayahuasca and peyote. And we know that people have done this in the past, have taken these things for sacred pursuits. But these guys, for their study, were like, okay, well, let's concentrate on more sort of mainstream religions. And they picked religious leaders that were in what they called well-established organizations, people with formal training. And they're volunteers, of course. And in the judgment of the study team, a suitable applicant would have to be regarded as an unambiguous representative of their religion by other members of that religion. And the final selection included a lot of Christians, 4 Episcopalians, 4 Presbyterians, 3 United Methodists, 2 Lutherans, 2 United Church of Christ, 1 Congregational, 1 Baptist, 1 Eastern Orthodox, 1 Pentecostal, 1 Reformed Church in America, 1 Roman Catholic, and 1 Unitarian Universalist. No fistfights were reported. 5 from Judaism, 3 Orthodox, 1 Reconstructionist, 1 Renewal, and 1 Sunni Islam, and a Zen Buddhist. And in controlled experiments, all 33 participants were placed in a living room-like setting, furnished with comfortable seating, with 2 facilitators, a couch, end tables, and area rugs. This is not what the CIA was doing in the 50s. And they were encouraged to bring any religious or personal items with them, and then they were given what is described as a moderately high dose of psilocybin. And they were encouraged to lie on the couch, wear eye shades. Now, they weren't all in the same room together. Sounds like they were, but they were not. I believe this was done individually. And then 24 of them received a second dose 1 month later. 6 of the 24 received the same dose. The remaining 18 had their dosage increased. Okay, what was the outcome? 92% of these participants found their experience profoundly sacred. According to the study authors, the 6-month screening showed that compared to a control group who did not take the magic mushrooms, the religious leaders who took the compound reported, quote, significantly greater positive changes in their religious practices, attitudes about their religion, and effectiveness as a religious leader. According to the study, participants rated at least one of their psilocybin experiences to be, quote, among the top 5 most spiritually significant, that's 96% of them, profoundly sacred, 92%, psychologically insightful, 83%, and psychologically meaningful, 79%. 42% of them rated their experiences to be, quote, the single most profound of their lifetime. Nobody had a bad trip. 46% of them rated their experience as among the top 5 most psychologically challenging of their lives. Now, we here don't necessarily recommend recreational drug use, but I don't even see this as being recreational. The idea is that these are spiritual people who are asked to have a psychedelic experience in the context of their particular religiosity, and pretty much every one of them came away saying, it made them better at what they do. What do you guys think?
It really demonstrates to me something that I've long suspected about psilocybin, which is that it is a magnifier of suggestible experience. Set and setting is what people often talk about. What your intention is. What are your desires? What are your expectations? What are your fears? All the things that you come in with, that's your set. What's your setting? Well, where are you doing it? Who are the people who are conducting this experience? Who are the people that you're with? So all those things, if you unpacked and tried to talk about what this experience was for all these people in those terms, I think you inevitably wind up with something that is really, really positive, because you're talking about a very strong, cohesive, coherent set for all these participants. What they're coming in with is a high degree of religious commitment and training, which is not nothing. And then setting, why are they there? What are they doing it for? The purpose for which they're doing it, and who they're doing it with, trusted scientists and researchers. So it's not surprising to me, and it's really, really cool. But I think it's also the exact wrong thing to take away from this is that you should go home and try mushrooms. Because it's like, that's not how they work.
I'm delighted that people are asking those questions and that people are curious about the spiritual experiences that can be provided both by religion and by psilocybin. I think just the conversation, that's really the only takeaway for me, that we're talking about how, like, if you're a Buddhist, you can be a stronger Buddhist, actually.
Yeah. Or an Orthodox Jew, and like a rabbi, and no one is going like, what is this corrupted, horrible, it's not the 1960s anymore. My one quibble in my experience with mushrooms, because I have taken mushrooms several times in my life, is that indoor is okay, outdoors amazing. That, like, the quality of experience when you are in nature is more profound in my experience, with my own experiences and those and others that I've known. So had they not had a comfortable living room, which was probably way more controllable, but a beautiful meadow, these people might have ascended straight to heaven.
Yeah, they may not even be here anymore. I had a similar quibble, and it led to other questions, like, did any of them, so they brought possible religious paraphernalia with them.
Yes.
Did any of those things have faces, and did anybody see Jesus's face melt?
I didn't see anything else. The other thing they didn't have wisely was mirrors.
That's what I was going to ask too.
Have you ever really looked at your religious hands?
Themselves turned into an old person in the mirror and get tracked.
No data on that. Sorry.
Have they made public, or have any of these people come forward with, like, more detailed stories about their trips and about
Not that I've seen. However, we're going to include this study in the Substack supplemental, so people can go read the study itself.
My last thought is that I think there's a lot of suspicion, especially around this. Psilocybin culture has typically not been very traditionally religious. And I think that there's a suspicion in that culture that if these people would just do mushrooms, they would abandon their sort of like stodgy orthodoxies and, go forward with a more enlightened road toward whatever mother god, right? And so again, I feel somewhat confirmed in my suspicion that mushrooms don't deliver something objective. They deliver something subjective, like deeply, deeply subjective. And so these people's experiences drew them closer or further down the path they were already on, rather than sort of derailing them and putting them into an entirely different path, which I think is very, very fascinating. That seems to be evidentiary that the mushrooms are not speaking independently. They are not giving you the doorway to something that is universal or consistent. They are deeply personal.
I'd be fascinated to see interviews with each of the participants where they talk about their experience and compare that to their own belief systems and what was revealed to them, because I think many of them would, and what challenged them. It would be an amazing, amazing book to read.
Yeah.
One of my meditation teachers sometimes refers to your religion that you may have grown up in as your mother tongue. I think that's a really helpful framing for this, that it's like, nobody expects you to learn a completely new language when you're trying to make sense of the unexplainable. It's not even words. It's just the way that you understood the spiritual feelings that you've had throughout your life that you can't actually really describe. So it actually is really heartbreaking to think that people think they have to toss all of it when some of it really actually worked for them, and they could still use those words as they're starting to like learn how to use a type of Rosetta Stone to be able to speak other languages. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Not that mushrooms are the Rosetta Stone, but I feel like
I think
continued development is the Rosetta Stone, you know?
Yeah.
Are you guys ready to Buga?
Dude.
Oh my gosh. So ready to Buga.
What is this,
Okay,
the 1970s?
Yeah, let's Buga. Everyone, let's get groovy.
I'm going to do the hustle.
Okay, so the Bugasphere stories are in a really particular place. I think it's kind of special to be doing this on this podcast because this is the whole point. We're going to be continually touching back on ongoing mysteries, and this does continue to be mysterious, and the articles continue to be potentially erroneous. So we've got I
wouldn't have it any other way.
Articles. We're looking at the Mirror, the Blaze, and the Daily Mail. That's what we're looking at today because the internet is crawling. Fox News is crawling with stories about the Bugasphere. Just as a reminder for anybody who may have forgotten or didn't listen to our previous episode on the Bugasphere, it's a soccer ball-sized metal sphere that was allegedly spotted zooming around the skies of Buga, Colombia back in March. And since then, it's apparently being studied by researchers from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, or UNAM for short. And they have recently, apparently, I'm going to use those words a lot because that's all we got, okay? We're just gathering the words from these articles covered in pop-ups. So, but they are corroborating each other. So there's that, at least a fair bit. I'll talk about some of the strange facts that only seem to be in one article at the end here, but so they've got a very powerful microscope. They've been doing scans to look at this sphere, and they're finding a maze of fiber optic wires that suggest it can send and receive signals. That's sort of the latest in the news. But they have also introduced several new characters. So last time we talked about a man named Jose Luis Velasquez, who was apparently the radiologist who x-rayed the sphere and found out that the sphere had 3 layers of metal-like material and 18 microspheres inside surrounding a central nucleus that they're calling a chip. We met that guy. We also talked about a woman named Julia Mossbridge. She's from the University of San Diego's Department of Physics and Biophysics, and she's also a UAP researcher. And these articles are all quoting her still. She's saying that it looks like a man-made art project, and she very astutely pointed out that no genuine connection has been made between the orb that people filmed flying through the sky and the thing that was in the woods that was found. The man who found it, we didn't hear from him in the previous rash of articles. His name is David Velez El Potro, and he has apparently, according to the Daily Mail, suffered nausea and vertigo since touching the object. And he said he has a friend named Jose who has also felt sick for days after touching the object. And then this is something that I find so frustrating. The object also apparently has completely dehydrated the field it landed in, killing all the grass and also the soil where it landed. And they're saying that this might have to do with an electromagnetic field. According to the Daily Mail, this is what we've got. It likely wasn't radiation, but a kind of invisible energy that sucked all the water out of the grass and the soil, leaving them dead and unable to grow back. And here's what frustrates me, okay? This man, David Velez El Potro, he said that people have been texting him pictures of this field. And I looked up the name of the field. I can't find any pictures of this dead field. I can only find a really boring, grainy picture of this metal sphere just sitting in some trees. And those trees
seen
look
pictures
fine.
of it.
Did you see the field?
Yes.
Did you find the field? Okay,
Yeah,
and it
I've
looks
seen
dead?
pictures. Absolutely.
It's very uncommon in the summer to find
It was
brown grass.
It was straight dead, and then it was only in a limited area.
Okay, so there are pictures out there of this field. This is part of the story that the thing made these guys sick and that this field is now dead.
Yeah.
We also have another character. His name is Rodolfo Garrido. He's a Mexican engineer working with the UNAM team, and he's been interviewed on TV. I think it was on June 7th that the latest report happened, but it was recent. He was on something called Mouse on Television, and he was interviewed by a man named Jaime Maussan. So Mouse on Television sounds like it's related to Jaime Maussan on a show called Interstellar. And these are some of the things that Rodolfo, the engineer, has told us, that the sphere is now 5 times heavier than when it was found. It grew from 16. It started around, I think, around 4 pounds, but then it 16, now it's 20, and now it's 22. And it's never changing the volume, but the weight is changing. And it can generate its own magnetic field, he says. And the implication is that this is possibly like the changing weight and its ability to fly could be due to its capability of manipulating gravity. That's what Garrido is talking about. Now, Jaime Maussan, in all of these articles, was brought up to be an untrustworthy person, basically. So he's a UFO researcher, and all 3 of these articles basically, I think, felt like it was necessary. Whoever wrote them felt like it was necessary to say that he has previously claimed that he saw UFOs that turned out to be comets or lights in the sky, and also that he has claimed on 3 separate occasions that he found alien corpses. So we have a person who's very excited about this sphere, who we want to believe, but we don't know if we should. So
the Jaime guy was just the interviewer, though, right?
He's the interviewer.
That's the extent
yes,
of his involvement in the Bugasphere.
Yes,
phenomenon.
And I think he's also, I think continuing some investigations, and some broadcasts are coming from him. So it's possible that his involvement could be a little distracting for people potentially, because it's like, oh, well, this guy's a crackpot. It's like everybody would love to come and talk about the Bugasphere. So like, we're all welcome at the table is basically what I'm saying, but we need to sort through these facts. The UNAM also just published a report, and I did look at it. It is in Spanish. I couldn't read it. It looks like it was printed on a printer that was on its last leg. Has like all those horizontal stripes through it. So, and the watermark is Maussan Television. So I don't think we can, I don't know what to do with this report. I don't know why they couldn't print it with more ink. I don't know why. But that's what we've got. The last thing I want to talk about with this is that the Blaze article in particular got into a lot of this. Like Rodolfo Garrido, he showed up, and Jaime Maussan showed up in all 3 of these articles. So did Julia Mossbridge. But in the Blaze, they also got into the fact that, because there's etchings on this, that's why Julia Mossbridge thinks it looks like a man-made art project, just because it's covered in these like little cave paintings, like, what we would assume is something that humans make. Anyway, Here's the message. The origin of birth through union and energy in the cycle of transformation, meeting point of unity, expansion, and consciousness, individual consciousness.
Gobbledygook.
Another reason to hate AI.
I know.
Wait, so let me get this straight. They fed the like glyphs to AI, and they said, "What do you think these mean?" And AI was like, "Here's what they mean." Is that what they did?
I mean,
that was
my
the methodology.
Best guess. That's all I've got from the Blaze.
Come on.
Would you like me to write a shorter version of the message?
Well, and did they say like, "Oh, we found this on an orb," and then AI's like, "Oh, aliens. This is what people are saying about aliens."
Exactly.
Because the team said it interpreted the message to be, and I quote, "encouraging a collective shift in the consciousness to help Mother Earth, especially considering the current issues with pollution and the environmental decline." And it's like, yeah, that's what everybody's already saying.
I think
AI, you're not helping.
I think the message is more of an encouragement to like return to take more English classes so you can learn grammar.
One last claim from the Blaze, just to add this to our pile of things to consider, is that in the Blaze, just like right at the end of the article, they're like, "Oh, and by the way, there was another one in late May, another silver sphere flying through the skies with video of it." Although it was like a 1-second clip, that was in San Vicente del Caguan, which is, I looked it up, 612 kilometers away from Buga. So,
yes.
But it was like, no information, just so you know, another one.
There are videos of at least one more in Colombia, possibly one in China. And so, we'll be revisiting this.
I mean, okay, sure. Yeah, we should revisit it. Like, we should continue to revisit it because awesome. It's fun. But at this point, the informational environment we live in is so broken and chaotic that, like, who knows? Like, any of this stuff. I don't know who I would trust or not trust in any of the characters in this story. I guess here's where I'm at. What would it take for me to even give real credence to a story like this? Like, who would I trust? I don't know.
Great question, because, like, I'm not inclined to trust the Daily Mirror or the Blaze, like,
Certainly
in any way,
not.
shape, or form. And it appears this thing is already attracting charlatans.
But I'm not inclined to trust the Wall Street Journal either.
That's exactly my next
Is
point.
like, no matter what source you're talking about, like,
that
all of them are compromised, especially on this subject.
The Wall Street Journal just came out and said something to the effect of every UFO sighting was just a psyops from the military to high. And it's like,
What?
that is stenography. What are you guys doing? Well, I'll post a link to it in the supplement.
Yeah,
but
please do.
It's not believable.
No,
Yeah.
it's the whole thing is it's a snake eating its own tail, right? Because, like, well, if they were all psyops, then, like, why is this not a psyop, do we think? Is it ever right for a government to lie to its people? Is it ever okay for information to be cloistered? And, like, there was a really strong argument for the protection of sensitive national security information. This idea has been so abused in the past half century or more, 80 years or whatever, that, like, at this point, I don't buy any of it. I'm like, all of the secrets, all of the lies, all they have done is completely eroded public trust. And, like, here we are with no idea who to trust about any of this stuff that matters to us. So, like, I don't think it's ever actually ethical to lie. And it's funny because you can come up with every justification in the world for lying about a specific circumstance, but the effect of lying in the aggregate is always negative. Like, we are always worse off as a culture, as a society, when deception is normalized. Or anyway, rant over. But, like, my gosh, like, it's very frustrating because, like, what a cool story. But I don't know who to trust.
Okay, when it comes to, if we are in ontological freefall, I will take art project over psyop every time, right?
Right.
Art project over psyop.
Please
think
let this
that's
be an art
very
project.
fair.
Like, what a cool art project.
And
Totally.
here's the tip: anytime the next person filming a sphere flying, please pan up to see if it is being suspended from a drone with fishing wire. Don't just film the thing. Just do a complete 360 pan like you're doing a magic trick. Okay? Thank you.
I can't help but think about my experience on jury duty a couple weeks ago, because the judge was very scary and he gave a couple of speeches that were actually really rousing. And we're always doing this, unfortunately. He brought up the term faith, actually. He said, faith is a massive part of what we're doing every day. You have to figure out whether or not you believe the person who's talking. That's literally how our legal system works, is that a big group of strangers just tries to be like, I don't know, what does my gut say? Do I trust this person? Because that person's saying the opposite. And these two really smart people have prepped for months to say the opposites of each other, even. So I guess this is what we just have to continue to do.
People have to go with their gut. I am thrilled to introduce my friends, Scott Philbrook and Forrest Burgess, from the amazing podcast Astonishing Legends, which they've been doing since 1968. And they're the finest kind, beautiful guys, an extraordinary body of work that they've assembled about, you name it, man, high strangeness. And they're here with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much. We're very honored to be here. It's getting to know you has been one of the great privileges of doing the show, honestly.
So that was money
And
well
any
spent on my
podcast,
part.
really. It's getting to meet people in the field and just interested parties and making new friends. And that's one of the main benefits of podcasting.
I have been overwhelmed preparing for this because I have been shotgunning your podcast and falling in love. I mean, genuinely hooking it right up to my veins, because I'm like Tom is absolutely right. There are no skips. Every episode is like, well, I love everything about this. Where were you at when you started this, and where are you now? What has shifted for you or changed over the course of gathering all of these stories and talking to all of these people? What are you observing, and what is shifting in you?
I think for me, at least on our show, it's kind of well known that my shift, because when we started out in the analogy we always use is being the X-Files, and who was Mulder and who was Scully, and and I was Scully. I was like really into everything, but I was skeptical about stuff. And the more we got into it, the more, as Forrest says, a lot of times we just wind up coming out of intense investigations with more questions. And then we did an investigation at a haunted house that was an off-the-cuff thing that we just did because we happened to be in town for a thing about Amelia Earhart. For whatever reason, Amelia grew up like 3 blocks from one of the most haunted houses in the country. And so when we were there, these people that we were making friends with in the town, Atchison, Kansas, they were like, hey, we got the keys if you want to go have an... And meanwhile, we're both hot panicking about this panel we have to do about Amelia Earhart and how many planes like hers are missing and all this stuff. And we got an EVP in that house on that recorder that changed my life. And like everything I believe just went out the window. And I had a bunch of ongoing experiences that persisted after that trip. And then it took a long, long time to get over that experience. That was called File 10 is what we called it, because it was the 10th file on that recorder. And there's a whole lot of backstory and a giant multi-parter on that, which I'm not going to get into. But the house is called the Sally House, Sallie. And so for me, moving forward from that point on, I started going into our oncoming topics with a little more open-mindedness about the possibility of the unexplained. And since then, it's not automatic for me to go, oh yeah, that definitely happened, that definitely happened. But there are certain hallmarks that we've learned about. You start to see things, you're like, this rings of authenticity because it actually lines up with other people who've never met, and there's certain factors that intersect, and you start to see these little... it's the red yarn thing. You start to see connections between different people's stories. And I'm more believing now than I was when we started. I still try to go, okay, now let's talk about the mundane. Let's figure out what really could have happened here. And I think that definitely happens. I think a ton of Bigfoot sightings are bears or whatever, furry things with mange. But I also believe very much in the Patterson-Gimlin film, which we did a long series on. And so that's where I'm at.
I'll jump in and say the reason that I believe that there is Bigfoot is because of y'all's multi-parter on Patterson-Gimlin, which I ate up. And your aspect to it, your posture, as Jordan likes to say, of open-minded skepticism and just exhaustively covering the whole thing from every angle was what I needed to hear in order to be convinced. So anyway, I'll jump back out.
Well, quickly, and I want to get over to Forrest because I want to hear what he has to say about this, but I'm also going to say that I thought I knew how to dig into something until you came on our show talking about blood falls, and I was like, my God, this man is crazy.
This guy's
Tom
obsessed.
puts everyone to shame.
I'm not sure that...
How did you have time to do anything else with your life while you were researching?
I know.
That sounds very sad.
No, it's amazing. You're the authority.
You guys know how to run rabbits. You know how it feels where you're like...
It's true.
Like a dog, and you're like, you got to go, man. You got to go. I get it, Yeah.
Well, it's the academic approach and an author's approach, and that's why we often turn to books, because we know that somebody, whether you agree with the, what's posited in the book or not, you can often trust that they've dug through a lot of the research for you and found angles and know it better than our cursory research, which we always kind of joke about. But, we don't have time for that. It's kind of like meatball surgery. We get it patched up. We try and present something that's got as many angles as we think are presentable, entertaining, informative. You can keep going on, but you got to stop at some point. So, that's another thing about podcasting. It's a very indulgent medium. So you can talk about something as long as you want. But Tom, that's a great, I think, template or example about how my outlook has developed. And, I grew up with a family that they weren't super into it, but, just typical 70s and 60s metaphysical subjects in the same books, and have had a few minor experiences in the family throughout the years, but not a lot like a lot of other people in their family where it's a constant kind of thing where you cannot deny it. Otherwise, you will go crazy if you start to deny that much of what's happening in your reality. But for the Patterson-Gimlin film, you grew up in, in the Pacific Northwest. Bigfoot's just, it's common parlance. And, a few people thought they've seen them that you might know growing up. And so it's just like, yeah, it probably exists, but you're not sure. And being a kid, it's like, those Sun International pictures, the cheesy documentaries. which were really all we had, even though there was genuine research going on. You didn't go down that rabbit hole yet. So when we dug into it ourselves, and I think it was Scott saying, like, we should finally take a look at that film. And it's like, yeah, I believe it's real, or at least it's the possibility of being real. I didn't outright let all people just like, no, it's got to be a fake. That guy's a charlatan. And then the charm that happens and the wow factor is that you start getting into it, and then little things that you'd ignored before. And I don't know how it got past me as a kid, but you realize that Patty the Bigfoot on film is likely female and has breasts. And it's like, I don't think I ever realized that as a kid. It's like, well, that's if that's fake, that's a nice touch.
But the costume isn't hard enough to make. You're going to do boobs?
If you're going to deny it, you just say, like, it's a costume. It's like, well, why do you think that? Well, it just is. I don't need to look at it. I just know it is. I can't be real. And it's like, okay, once, as I always say, and that quote actually is spoken by Jonathan Winters, where he plays the pool shark in an episode of Twilight Zone with Jack Klugman, where he tells Jack Klugman, nothing's impossible. It's just that some things are more likely than others. And that is kind of where I've come to rest with all this. To me, it's like, I'm open to considering everything. To me, though, at this point, some things seem more likely than others. And when you start looking at the Patterson-Gimlin film, it's like, it's less likely that was faked. And it's a journey, it's like we start off, it's like, well, that interests me. And then you don't really dig into it. And over the years, you start to notice patterns, hopefully, and you start to collect more information and anecdotes. And a lot of this is anecdotal, of course. You can't get a Bigfoot in a jar, in a cage, in a laboratory, or a ghost in a jar, as we always joke. But you could take certain anecdotes and compare them, and as Scott was saying, then if things line up, it's like, yeah, there's some threads here that it didn't seem likely that this is made up, that at least part of it, there's a ring of truth. And because the other option is that everybody is lying. Everybody is mistaken. Everybody is trying to sell a book and make $1 million. And that seems unlikely. And again, the joy is that you start off with something and you realize you didn't know a whole lot, or that you had an opinion and it got changed. And that's the real fun of it. And we hope that translates to the audience, because that's one of the biggest compliments we can get. It's like, I hate this subject. I really didn't want to listen to it. I had nothing else better to do. I started listening and I realized, like, wow, this is interesting. I never knew this about it. And they start ending up liking a topic that they didn't think they would.
Another one that stands out for me that we did, we're over 300 episodes now, so it's hard to remember everything that we've done, but one of them that really stands out in that realm of what Forrest was talking about is the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins. But there was this whole implication that it was just a bunch of drunk hillbillies up in the mountains, as though people that live in the mountains have never seen an owl and would mistake an owl for something else. So that's where it started. We went down a whole thing with that and peer-reviewed papers, which now are catching a lot of hell lately. And we were one of the first ones to be like, this paper about this particular case is got a bunch of bad references in it, bad sources, and doesn't make sense, to the point where they actually had to change the paper. So it was like, this is not the right way to come at this. But the other thing to me that's been something that in the past year or two, that not everything in the story is necessarily true or false. It's very gray from start to finish, because I feel like we've covered things where somebody has experienced something very real and unusual at the outset, but then once they started getting questioned or having all these people just all over them, or what really happened, and just not leaving them alone, that maybe they're fabricating ongoing things happening. I don't think that's in every case, but in some cases that definitely feels like some of these stories that came along after the first thing that happened seem a little sketchy, but I still believe the first one. These are people, and they're good people and bad people and smart people and not educated people. And just because they came from a certain background, it's they don't know how to deal with like the onset of fame, or being constantly interrogated, or wishing they had never said it in the first place. And they do that in different ways.
You don't believe everything, because obviously people can be mistaken, and often are. And eyewitness testimony is faulty a lot of the time, but it's all we have. So you investigate it, you see what's really going on, and then you make a judgment. And with that paper on Kelly Hopkinsville, it was actually about pseudoscience and quack medicine. And they said, well, take this case, for example. And, so didn't really delve into it. They just thought, maybe they saw a little headline like, it's just a bunch of beer and hillbillies. End of story. And see, so that's a case where that was false, because these people were just drunk. It's like, well, you didn't check out their story. You added it to something else, and it creates a false narrative. And also, it's terribly insulting to the people that did experience it. You're just painting them out of ego and hubris again.
We talk a lot about the brain as a filter, and that this idea that what we call consensus reality is really just a sort of, the Venn diagram of where our filters are aligned. And so we can all agree that this looks like this or this exists this way. And it's how we do science. We say, here's a thing that we observed happening. Did you observe it happening? As long as we all agree that this thing leads to this thing or this thing looks like that thing, then we can form a consensus reality. But the problem is that phenomenological experience or personal experience often doesn't align with that consensus reality. So my question, I was gonna ask you guys, just people will say, well, why does it matter whether they're like what UFOs are or whatever? Why does it matter whether or not Bigfoot exists? Like, why does it matter? Like, why do people waste their time doing this? Like, this isn't going to put groceries on the table. This isn't going to cure cancer. This isn't going to solve the conflict in the Middle East. So I'm curious what your response is to that. What is the value there? What drives you? Why do you think it's so worthwhile what you're doing?
Well, I'll just say in terms of like, why do you keep doing it? Why continue? Like, did we ever get to that point? I call that point about 9 a.m. every morning. Like, should we keep going? But we got into it because we enjoyed it and we enjoyed talking about this stuff. And we were personally fascinated with it. And I can't speak, for Forrest's spiritual background, but in terms of my own, I would say when we started out, I would describe myself as fairly agnostic. But I've always had a fascination with our existence and what happens to the soul. If the soul is something, are we just dead or do we go on? And when it comes to things like that and UFOs and Bigfoot, it's true. We're not curing cancer. And to that end, I can't say that I should stop doing this to go do that because I didn't go to med school and I wouldn't be able to do that. But I do know that lots of folks that have been in the hospital, we've brought them great comfort because they email us a lot. And they're like, I'm stuck. I've been listening to this show. I've been listening to that show. And honestly, for some people, it was all they could do before they left this world. And we hear from their loved ones. And so that makes me feel like, okay, well, it's important to somebody. It's entertainment. It's entertaining somebody. It has entertained people. And when we started out, that's what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be entertainment, and we wanted hopefully to be able to support ourselves. I also was coming out of 17 years in advertising, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And we can say that one episode actually saved somebody's life. So it's just one with 313. But there was one that show was called Sarah and the Spider Woman. Well, she came on to talk about what she went through. I'm going to regret bringing this up because the original disease is almost impossible to remember. But we were talking about horrific hallucinations in this particular case, and they were connected to what I think is anti-receptor NMDA encephalitis.
Wow. Most of that sounds correct, yeah.
And then a woman had written a book about it called Brain on Fire. It was a bestseller. It's a really amazing book because she went through this thing. She was a journalist and went through it. And the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. Untreated, it could lead to death. And this listener in the UK heard the show and was experiencing these symptoms and thought she was having paranormal issues. When she heard the episode and heard the possibility that there was a scientific medical diagnosis for this, she got it and got better.
The big question, so much of this show has always been for me philosophical and metaphysical in a sense, but it's philosophy. Because what are the biggest questions that we have as human beings? Who are we? What are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And you can say, well, I got to go to work. I got to get groceries after work. The kids got to go to soccer. Whatever it is, that's your daily business. And I do too every day. I have to remind myself to live beyond that a little bit, like to get your head out of the day-to-day grind because it's so easy to get that road hypnosis and that's where you're focusing. But it's a much bigger world out there and a bigger universe and existence. Just talking about what the names in your titles here. Gods, what forces are there that are unseen, that are more powerful than us, that may have influence over us in the past and presently? Ghosts, is there an afterlife? Do we live on? A lot of people want to know that because things don't last forever, and neither do we. So what happens with that? Is that possible? And UFOs, well, that may be the biggest question, the biggest news story on the planet ever, if it turns out to be real and we do have some contact, because you could say, well, you're not curing cancer. Well, there's a lot of people who have studied this and believe that there's technology out there that some forces and those in charge have been keeping hidden that could have cured cancer 70 years ago, that we would have unlimited natural energy that is not polluting, that so many diseases could have been cured, world peace, plenty of food. What bigger questions are there than that, other than your daily, like, how am I going to get to next week? Well, you have to start thinking bigger than that. And again, it's too much for a lot of folks, and I understand that, and it's fair. That I can't think about that right now because I can't all the time, trouble all the time. Like, I can't really get into that right now. I got to take care of so-and-so or do this for myself. So, yeah,
Forrest, my problem is that I think about that all the time.
Well, and I think that's fine as long as you get, you got daily responsibilities. We got obligations that have to be met.
Yeah.
So you do that, but you can also live beyond that. I think it's a richer life when you do. But but as far as like people, what's funny is that some people will say, as you said, none of this matters. This is all baloney. None of it's real. You're wasting your time. And on the other end, people will tell us, hey, what you're studying and talking about, that's dangerous, or it could be dangerous. It's like, well, what is it? Is it worth nothing, or is it dangerous? Okay, why is it dangerous, and why don't you want to talk about this at least? We're not employing any action. That's for others and with more power to do. But we could at least study this stuff and think about the world. And so, yeah, and these are the biggest questions out there as human beings, in my opinion. So, have your other interests, but you don't have to be interested in this, but we are.
I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can't become self-actualized if you don't know where your next meal is going to come from.
Breathe.
Right.
But we started
Yeah.
the stories that you guys are telling and investigating, the stuff that we are talking about. Yes, it is entertaining, and it entertains us, and we hope it brings a little bit of respite and entertainment to others. But the other thing that it does, I think, more foundationally, is says you're not alone. You're not alone in having a sense of the subtle world, and you're not alone in believing that this is an enchanted world, because it is, and it's easy to become disenchanted, when you're worried about, the utility bill or whatever.
I think about the sort of fabric of humanity and how if you pull on certain threads, the whole thing will just contract. I want to find those threads. Like, I think all the things that you guys talk about and the things that we try to talk about, the reason it feels important to me is that when you pull on certain threads, it really does just draw everybody together. We can't pretend that we're in these little siloed tribes and that we're at odds with each other and that we're at war with one another. If like this thing that we're talking about turns out to be true, if this story turns out to be legitimate, that means that the whole thing, the whole fiction of nation states and like tribes and wars it's immaterial. And if you pull on that thread, it collapses all of it. And we realize, oh, we're all tied together. We're all part of the same family. We're all doing the same human project.
Our like garbage limiting beliefs about life and ourselves are actually really horrifying and sad. And so I have experienced, even just on a day-to-day basis with your podcast, what it is to be stuck in the mire of like my life and this problem I have that won't go away and this thing that won't stop with this person, and then to have a bubble of wonder pop up over my head listening to your podcast and remembering that I'm a part of something so much bigger. It could sound a little naive, but I don't think it is at all. It's just a reminder, like, wake up, Mallory, wake up. There's a lot more going on than so-and-so who's mad at you today or whatever. Like, and I have to thank you for that.
We're huge fans. We actually are.
Huge fans.
And I consider you guys like friends and peers, but also like role models and goals. And of course, we wish you every success, and we thank you abundantly. And I know we'll talk again soon.
Well, thank you so much for having us on your show. We wish you every success, and we'd be happy to come on anytime and talk at greater length. And there's a lot of things we can talk about. Every time I listen to your show, I was like, oh, we talked about this. And I want to call in. I wish I could call in or send you an email. By the way, there were 4 parts to the Bet Sphere. Thank you for the shout out.
Yes.
Not 2. He was like, I think they did 1 or 2.
Or
I
at
was
least
like,
2.
That's 4, Tom.
And I went back and it was like, oh, yeah, 4. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a
4,
good
yes.
6 hours. You guys love you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If you're new here, be sure to check out our Substack, where you can find a lot more cool stuff and share your own stories with us. Just head over to godsghostsufos.com or find the link in the description. Also, a quick reminder that no matter where you're listening, reviews really, really help other people find the show. So, hint, hint, please leave us one. All right, thanks again. See ya.